So now that we do have the new Ferrari Amalfi here, which one would I buy if I had the choice between the Aston Vantage or the Ferrari Amalfi? Which one of those would I buy? Now, some might say that the Amalfi is more comparable to the Vanquish, for example. But the thing is, the Vantage actually the starting price of the Vantage is about $195,000. If you load it up fully with all the options, it's close to $300,000 for the Vantage, and the Amalfi starts at $240,000. The power is very, very similar, so I think the Vantage and the Amalfi is the right cars to compare in this video, and that is, of course, exactly what we're going to do from front, side, and rear, the interior, and, of course, the spec and tech. So starting with the Ferrari Amalfi here, it starts, as I said, $240,000, and I've heard a lot of opinions about this design. Some people think it looks like a Toyota in the front, and I can see the why, because if you look at the Camry, for example, I think Camry is the best example. It also has the bar in the front end and the lights going up like that. So I'm going to do a tiny tweak to the Amalfi. I'm going to make a quick little redesign in this video as well. A couple of changes, but it's a problem with the redesign that I'm going to make. I'm going to let you know exactly later on why the problem happens when I redesign the Amalfi. So it's a front engine 3.9 liter twin turbo V8, 640 horsepower. You have 8-speed dual clutch auto rear wheel drive. The weight comes in at 3,240 pounds, 0 to 60 in about 3.3 seconds. Top speed 199 miles per hour. You have active rear wing in 3 different settings, which adds up to 240 pounds of downforce at 155 miles per hour. It does, of course, replace the Roma, embracing sharper styling and a bold blindfold front fascia, inspired by the rest of the lineup, the F80, the 12-cylinder as well. Similar styling, minimalist styling for this compared to the Roma. So it maintains the sleek 2+2 GT proportions. The length is about 4,670 millimeters. Wheelbase 2,650 millimeters. Pretty much the same proportions as the Roma, which is not a bad thing at all, because the Roma is one of the most beautiful Ferraris, in my opinion, in the last 50 years or so. So you have efficient yet subtle aerodynamics. Ferrari are masters at crafting aerodynamics into the bodywork of the vehicle itself, instead of having massive spoilers, massive wings, and stuff like that ruins the sleekness, the elegance of the design. They make the car itself a wing. So the entire vehicle, the body of the car, actually acts as a wing by itself. So you have lightweight carbon ceramic brakes, double wishbone suspension. Now, looking at the Aston Martin from 2025, the refreshed version starts, as I said, $195,000, $292,000 loaded though. So $100,000 in options are available for the Vantage. You have a front mid 4-liter twin-turbo V8, similar to what we have in the Amalfi, 3.9 liter for the Amalfi, 4-liter for the Vantage. Of course, the engine comes from Mercedes-AMG, tuned to 656 horsepower. You have the same also 8-speed automatic rear transaxle, rear-wheel drive with torque vectoring diff. The weight comes in a little bit heavier here than the Ferrari at 3,538 pounds, so about 200 or so pounds heavy, or 300 pounds heavier than the Ferrari. 0 to 60 though, pretty similar. You have a 3.4 second 0 to 60 time compared to 3.3 for the Amalfi. Top speed 202 miles per hour, so 3 miles per hour faster than the Ferrari. Chassis suspension is 7% stiffer than the previous Vantage. Built-in adaptive dampers, Michelin Pilot Sport tires. You also have active aero for the Aston Martin as well as the Ferrari. Is of course redone for 2025. It got wider. It looks so planted. The Vantage is one of the most beautiful cars of 2025. It's 30 millimeters wider than the previous one. You got these pronounced rear arches, a larger front grille as well, which increased the airflow by 38%, and also, of course, wider rear track. Those beefy fenders in the rear just planting the Vantage on the road. The interior design echoing the Vanquish, one of Aston Martin's most aggressive front-engine coupes, and it also comes as a roadster, which I'm sure the Amalfi is going to be available as a Spider further down the line. Now, let's jump in here. Let's jump into Photoshop and have a look at these designs. When you look at them like this, side by side. Here you can clearly see the more detailed design of the Aston Martin. I just think this is a more interesting design because there are more things to appreciate in this design than we have in the Ferrari. You can see I love this, how this is my favorite line of this Aston Martin. I think it's one of the most beautiful lines, how this grille goes in and curves up and creates this hood line for the key lines in the hood. This is a new placement for the headlight unit. It used to sit more horizontal in the previous pre-facelift, something like this, but now they stretch up onto the fender and create this more exotic feel. We also have no fakeness in the front end. This is an actually, I mean, functional side air intake right here on the side, which air flows in here, probably shoots out in the wheelhouse, looking very, very clean. I mean, one of my favorite Aston Martins of all time is the new Vantage. It's just a beautiful design. Now, looking at the Ferrari, I made a video on this yesterday. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, but I said that I do prefer the Roma design because it's just a more it's a more interesting design, just like I said here with the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin looks great because there are so many details that you can appreciate. This looks almost too minimalistic for a Ferrari, even though it is a beautiful, beautiful looking design. But what I'm going to do here is just a quick little redesign. And I said there is a problem when I do this redesign, and I'm going to let you know why. So let's jump in here. Let me show you. So I want to have you see these headlights? I think they're a little bit too small. So I want to increase the size of the headlights, make them stretch out a little bit more into the center portion of the vehicle, and also this top part, the black part on top of it, have that be a little bit wider as well. Try to keep everything in a straight line, something like this. To have more of a defined headlight, the eyeball needs to be more pronounced, in my opinion. For the Amalfi, it's a little bit too small. Just a little tweak like that is all I need for this vehicle, and also have the daytime light to be straight again. And you see this corner down here in the lower section, I think this is too sharp. So what I want to do here is just round this corner out just a little bit like this to create a more organic vibe for this section. I think having a sharp corner like that, it doesn't really suit Ferrari. Ferrari is supposed to be very dynamic and very organic in its lines. And that is pretty much all I need to see for a redesign of the Amalfi. But the problem is, when I make this redesign right here, you can see that it now almost becomes almost even closer to the Ferrari Roma when we do this. And this is just... naturally, this shows that the Ferrari Roma is the design that I prefer, because if I were to redesign the Amalfi, is going to turn into the Roma, essentially, because the Roma has bigger headlights and it also has this fluidness that we have in this lower section down here, which I just changed for the Amalfi. So looking at the before and after here, we can remove these lines, toggle between them. Here is the before and the after. It just looks a little bit more balanced, in my more harmonious, when we have specifically the curvature in the lower section compared to the original one. But still, it's a beautiful looking design. I don't want Ferrari to go any more minimalist than what we have right here. This is minimalist enough. We still need to have a personality for the vehicles, specifically when we're talking about an Italian exotic like the Ferrari. Looking at the side view here, and this is where it gets very, very, very complicated for me, because both of these, I mean, they look fantastic. Both of these vehicles look absolutely stunning in side view. It's probably my favorite view for both of these vehicles. You can see the greenhouse here, how it dips down, a pillar stretching all the way down, as we talked about yesterday, into the front axle center portion. We have this volume down here being carved out, and this new aero design for the muscle in the rear, over the rear axle. And the wheel design, look at the 5-spoke wheels, looking great. This color by itself, beautiful looking color. I do like that we still have the badge on the side front fender right there, and we also have the greenhouse very, very tight, dipping down and creating this upswing in the back section to create a movement forward overall for this vehicle. And then we have the front end looking very, very sharp, and you can see the sharp corner here in the front end as well. Just this angle, it is way, way too sharp for me. And that is the reason why I want to just create a subtle little corner right there to create more of a organic, as I said, a more dynamic feel, more subtle corner for that area. Now looking at the Aston Martin here, I mean, can you make a side view better looking than this for a front engine two-door coupe? I don't think so. I think this is spot on. This is perfection when it comes to side view design, because compare this to the Roma, the biggest change is happening back here in the rear end. This ducktail design that we have for the Vantage is by far one of my favorite features for any car design in production in 2025. This ducktail right here looking beautiful, and I also like how the graphic stretches in far into the body, and we also have this massive aggressive diffuser with this big chamfer in the rear end, and same styling for the side view, the lower section. We still have this carved out portion, as you can see, with the black side skirt, and I also like these graphics that we have in the side, adding some more, again, interesting details, small little details like this. Just makes it a much more interesting design to look at. Specifically, I mean, compared to the old one that had this sort of this part could be blacked out. I didn't really like that because it looked a little cheap to me. This looks a lot better. We still have the A-pillar dipping down and the proportions being, I mean, Aston Martin and proportions. I think they have always been masters at proportions when it comes to their two-door sports cars. You have the muscle over the rear axle. We actually have one single shoulder line dipping down slightly and never really goes back up over the rear fenders, looking beautiful. The wheels is the only thing here. I do like the design, 5-spoke design of the wheels, but I would definitely switch them out and not have them be blacked out in this case, because we cannot appreciate the beautiful wheel design, the spoke design, when there are blacked out. So I want to have them be silver like we have on the Ferrari. But both of these, I mean, this is the side views where it gets extremely tricky for me. Which one do I prefer? But since we have more details in the Vantage, I think I prefer the Vantage in this case. Looking at the rear end, same thing here. The Amalfi is extremely simple in its design. You can see how much they simplified everything in the rear end, comparing this to, of course, the Roma. We don't have this chamfer that I loved with the old Roma, having a chamfer going down something like this, and then that housed the taillight units up here. Now it's just a flat surface right here, which is totally fine because the sculpture of this, the overall proportions still are intact and still are pretty much Ferrari. We have this massive muscle over the rear axle looking beautiful, and the diffuser now sits in a horizontal level like this instead of having the angles up like we had in the Roma, which again, some might say, me included, I think that was a more interesting design to have some more not so many horizontal lines in this and vertical lines like we have here. That is the reason why the Roma to me is still the #1 design when it comes to these two, the Amalfi and the Roma. And again, if we're gonna get even more minimalist than this, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should stop here and not remove any more details of this vehicle. But check this out. I mean, again, the A-pillar going down goes right into the front end axle right there, center point. Now looking at the Aston Martin, this angle by far my favorite view for the Aston Martin, because here we can appreciate the ducktail in the back. And one detail I always loved about this, even the pre-facelift looked pretty similar, is that we have this chamfer up top going right into this chamfer in the lower section, creating a very, very interesting design, and how the taillight follows the outline of the top section of this diffuser is just beautiful. I don't know how Aston Martin are going to be able to top this design with the next Vantage. And you can see the shoulder line, very different from a Ferrari. Ferrari has more of a clear muscle over the rear axle, while the Aston Martin has a single line that goes right from the front end and never really goes back up here over the rear axle, which I think looks absolutely stunning. And the roof line as well, going down here, going into this stunning ducktail in the back. And we still have the angle for the diffuser. In this case, they are angled upwards a little bit, creating a much more organic look than what we have in the Ferrari, for example. Now, both of these, I really like what both of these manufacturers have done with the interior, because Ferrari thankfully went back to physical buttons for their interiors. You can see it right here, physical buttons now on the steering wheel as well, looking great. That is something that the clients wanted, and they got it with the new Amalfi. We have a new situation for the infotainment screen. It doesn't stick up like it did on the Roma, sticking up something like this in the middle. Now it sits all the way down here, looking beautiful. We have the gear selector down here as well, and we also have almost a mirrored image of the gauge cluster being mirrored in this area for the passenger passenger now has a screen by themselves where they can adjust the temperature, the seat controls, and also see how far you're going and how much you're revving this 3.9 liter V8. They can have a visual of that right in front of themselves. But the best upgrade for this happens right here with the Aston Martin. I mean, what a clean refresh this is compared to the old pre-facelift, which looks like some sort of alien spaceship when you stepped into it. It had no connection to the outside, which was one of the cleanest designs. And then you stepped into it and you had like angles for the vents in a weird situation, and nothing had the cleanliness of the exterior design. But now we have two parallel lines like this going down in this waterfall design with beautiful physical buttons all across this interior, with a small screen that does not stick up and intrude on anything else in the interior. It has its place and it sits right there. It doesn't need to be a 22-inch screen. I also like the housing for the gauge cluster with hollowed out carbon fiber pieces on the side, looking beautiful. Same goes for the steering wheel with a flat bottom steering wheel right there. Both of these interiors are beautiful in my opinion, and thankfully they still retain the physical buttons that I've been preaching about for so long to bring them back. I feel like we're starting to slowly bring back physical buttons in interior, which is very exciting. So which one of these would I personally buy? Now, for me, it's a rather simple choice, to be honest. Ferrari has this mystique around it. The name, the Ferrari badge, it's very unique and it's very, very special. Aston Martin feels not as mysterious, I would say. It's more of a straightforward sports car GT brand. But when it comes to the design, I'm going to go with the Aston Martin. First of all, it's a lot cheaper if you don't, spec it to the max up to $300,000. $195,000 for a base Vantage compared to a base Amalfi for $240,000. And then we have the design. I do actually prefer the philosophy of the Vantage design, where you have more small details. You also have the eyeballs and the mouth design still intact in the front end. And the grille is big, but the big grills on Aston Martin, for some reason, they always work. They seem to implement the big grills in a way that it makes it feel natural to have that like that in the front ends on the Aston. So for me, the choice is pretty clear. Even though I love the new Amalfi, I would still go for the Aston Martin if I had to have one vehicle on a turntable in my garage.